in technical association with Indian Veterinary Association Kerala. Today, we have another engrossing session on research as a career for lady vets, busting the barriers, led by Dr. Asha and Philip. Dr. Asha and Philip, 2007 batch alumni of College of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Pukod, a well-known vet, especially to the lady vets of Kerala. She received her master in veterinary science from Division of Pathology, Indian Veterinary Research Institute, Bareilly, and currently pursuing her PhD from Department of Veterinary Medicine, University of Maryland, USA. Also, working as a graduate research assistant, Department of Biology, Indiana University, Bloomington, USA. She completed her master in veterinary pathology with flying colors, securing gold medal for the division topper in the year 2015. Later in 2016, she got ICAR Jawaharlal Nehru International Fellowship. And in 2018, she secured 3 travel awards: NIH Travel Award, Women in Science Travel Award, Freud Microbiology Travel Award, and won first place in Indiana University Selected Speaker Award. Again in 2019, she secured Women in Science Travel Award and MIT University Virology Symposium Travel Award. Recently, in this current year, she secured Floyd Summer Fellowship from Department of Biology, Indiana University. She is having teaching and mentoring experience from various universities and have stamped her name in high-impact fact journals. An ideal person for handling this session, and with and behalf of all, I wholeheartedly welcome you, ma'am, to this session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for nice introduction, and thank you the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present this topic. So, can you all see the screen? I hope you can see the screen. Okay, so currently I am doing my PhD. So there is a small correction what Amita mentioned about me. Still, I am a PhD student. So currently I am doing my PhD in Indiana University and not in Maryland University. So I will talk about that story. So this is a general outline about today's topic. I am going to divide today's talk into 4 major categories. First one is being a vet. Second is women in science, research as a career, barriers to a woman. Can we break them? And fourth one will be the concerns of female student researchers. So I just want to say some disclaimers about today's topic. So this talk is not a 10 tips to succeed in research, because there is not such 10 tips. This talk is not a compilation about fellowships or grants you can get in research field, because I am still a student and I have never been through that process, and I don't know what are the fellowships and grants I can get. Okay, this is not a discussion about how the things should be, but this is a discussion about how I found things they are. So the only intention of this talk is to help and motivate you, especially women, to become a researcher. Being a vet. So I don't know how many of us have chosen this profession of being a vet with conscious mind. So I'm so proud to say I'm a vet, and I have chosen this profession out of my passion. After completing my schooling, I was very well assured about my passion for this veterinary science. So let me talk about my early background. I am originally from Wayanad, Kerala state, and I have completed my veterinary education from College of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Pukod, in 2013. And thereafter, I went for a master's degree in Indian Veterinary Research Institute, and I graduated with a master's degree in veterinary pathology. So as a vet, we can have careers in different avenues. So when compared to a medical doctor, that is the beauty of this veterinary field. So we have a lot to do. We can find a job in any field. So I'm not going to talk about all these opportunities or all these career options that one can see, because Dr. Ajit and Dr. Viju already gave you a fantastic talks on this topic. So I'm going to talk about the career as a research scientist. Okay, so research as a career. So I think this is this is a career where most of us are very interested in, but this is not a topic where we talk very deep into like what is research, what are the problems in research, what are the benefits of research. It's a very softly spoken area. So today my idea is to give you an overview about what is research, especially for young researchers who are so passionate about doing research, and what are the different steps in research, how someone can pursue the research, and how we can succeed in research. So research, by definition, it can be split into two different terms. Let us split research into two words, re and search. Re means again and again, and search means to find out something. So in simpler terms, research means try to find out something by searching it again and again. So that means research never ends. Even if we find something, tomorrow somebody else can come and add to that point, and it will go on and go on forever. So the research, even though it looks simpler, it's very complex. It is a very systemic process of asking and attempting answers to the questions about the world. It's not only in the science. Research can happen in any field. It can be in like human behavior or animal behavior, astronomy, science, medicine, electronics, engineering, etc., etc., etc. And in research, it includes systematic collection of data, organization of the data, evaluation, and interpretation of data. So even the people are saying research as a career, it's not that simple. Okay, so there are different types of research. Based on the purpose, we can divide research into three main headings. First one is basic or fundamental research. Second one is applied or action research. And third one is a developmental research. There are some other divisions or classification for the research, but I'm not going to talk about that. This classification is what what young researchers are interested about. So let me explain what is basic research. So basic research is usually undertaken to extend the knowledge or gain the understanding without concerning about what is its utility. That means if someone is carrying out some sort of research to learn about something like very fundamental aspects of the biology or very fundamental aspects of like mathematics or chemistry or physics, this comes under the basic research. So the outcome of the basic research is not really important because we are not concerned about what is the utility of that research. We are only concerned about what knowledge we can add on to the existing knowledge. So the most of the researches carried out in different institutes, especially in the universities and in some other research organizations, it comes under the category of basic or fundamental research. So the second classification is applied or action research. So in this category, the research work is undertaken to acquire new knowledge with a specific intention of an application. That means by doing an applied research, we want to come up with some result or something that can help the mankind or which can solve the issue of the mankind. And we have to come up with some utility product out of that research. So these kind of researches are mostly carried out by the different industries, especially for making like drugs or like machines or like vaccines or those kind of things. And the third one is developmental research. So developmental research is kind of applied research. It's a minor modifications happening in applied research. That means if some private firms or some industries are making a minor modification in already discovered item. It is called developmental research. Okay, so this is a very important thing. So I know, like, whoever is so interested to do research, you have to understand what are the steps in the research. So let me explain basic steps in the research with an example. So all the research comes or begins with a research problem or asking some research questions. So in most of the cases, the research problem or question will be raised by the principal investigator or the team of the head. So if we talk about us, like students, in most of the cases, the research problem or the question will be raised by our professor. So let us go through an example. So let us go through an example of a research question. So in today's perspective, this is a big question. How to treat COVID-19 disease or how to eliminate COVID-19 disease from the globe? It's a very valid question. And different researchers all over the globe, throughout the entire world, they are trying to ask these questions and find out the answer. So the second step in research is developing a hypothesis or a design. So you have to know what is meant by hypothesis. A hypothesis means it is a formally stated testable prediction. So it is just a prediction. We are saying, okay, if we design experiments in so on so format, we can come up with an answer. So that is called hypothesis. So in this case, if we ask these questions about COVID-19, the hypothesis will be therapeutic drugs that specifically kills or a vaccine that protects against SARS-CoV-2 too can be developed by so and so methods. That is our hypothesis. And it is just a prediction. We don't know what will be the result, what will be the outcome. So the hypothesis has been developed, derived, and it has to be tested. And the third important step is conducting the study. And this is the most important step. And the young researchers, the students, the postdoc, and all the research scientists, we are participating in this step. This is the step where we can contribute to the science. That means conducting the study. This is a very systematic step in research where we are doing all these experiments, collecting the data, interpreting the data, and also analyzing the results of what experiments we have designed. Okay, so for example, in this case, the conducting of the study consists of making a vaccine platform. So for that, there are different approaches. So each research group will be going through different platforms. So it does not matter, but we have to have an experimental protocol, which is very well designed. So once we design such a vaccine platform, it can be for COVID-19, it can be a virus-based vaccine platform, or it can be a protein-based, or it can be DNA-based, or whatever. There should be an experimental protocol which has to be conducted in a very systematic manner. And the fourth step is testing the hypothesis. So our hypothesis was that, okay, therapeutic drugs or vaccines can be developed that protects the humans against the COVID-19. By doing some experiments, we have to test that hypothesis. So what we do is we will generate a candidate strain of the vaccines, and we have to conduct different animal studies and human trials to test our hypothesis that whether this strain of vaccine is able to provide immunological protection. Okay, the last step in research is communicating the results. This is another important step, because whatever results we are observing, we have to communicate our results to the scientific community as well as to the public. So the results are published in different scientific journals for the knowledge of the scientific community. In most of the cases, our research results are published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. That means whatever we are trying to publish will be reviewed by the experts in the field, and they will give us the comments and suggestions. And if they feel we conducted all the experiments right and our results looks perfect, then only it can be published. So, and the other aspect is like communicating the results or observation with the public. That's another very important aspect of a scientist. So we have to publish the information to the public through different social medias, because none of the public can read a scientific article and learn that, okay, what is the recent publication about COVID-19? What are the facts about COVID-19? Or how to balance the situation in this kind of like such pandemic situation. No one is going to read any scientific journals. So it is the responsibility of us, the researchers, to publish what our results and the knowledge to the public in the social media. So let us go through the traditional career path, or what we are usually go through. So the first step for us is an undergraduate degree, which is called BVSc and AH. As we all know, this is a professional degree. So this degree is sufficient to make money, to find an income. So whoever is like happy with a BVSc degree, go for it. Enjoy your profession as a veterinary surgeon and feel so proud to be a vet all the time, every time. For some others who are interested to go for some research or some other careers, they would go for some master's degree and PhD. So the master's degree is a specialist art of degree. That means after BVSc, we are going to specialize or focus our study in one small branch of science. It could be a clinical subject or it could be a non-clinical subject. It only depends on like what's your interest. So find your interest during your final years, at least your final years, like what you really want to do. Do you want to go as a veterinary practitioner, or do you want to go for higher studies? If you plan to go for higher studies, find your passion, whether it's a clinical subject or a paraclinical subject or basic subjects like anatomy or physiology, so on and so forth. And the third stage is PhD. It's such an important stage, and it really requires commitment and passion from you. This is an expert level, advanced state of art level of training. So I just want to highlight the PhD for so many reasons. First one, doing PhD is not that easy, because during PhD, the professor or the program is trying to make you as an independent researcher. It's an expert level of training. This is the time where you acquire all your skills, where you acquire information on how to collect, interpret your data. So this is a very important stage. I just want to draw a line here, because if you are not so passionate about research, don't think about the remaining steps I'm going to explain. If you're not committed to research, don't think about the coming part. If you're so interested about the research, please listen to the bottom part. So once you complete your PhD, you can go for some research-oriented training, which is called postdoc training. It's mostly available in like foreign countries. In India, I don't know like how many institutes are actually entertaining postdoc training, but this is very, very common practice in like European countries and in the US. So after completing the postdoc training, which is like 2 to 3 years of training after your PhD, it could be with the same field, or it can be in any different field. It does not matter. So this is the actual step where you think about your field of interest, what you want to be, what you want to do in your career as a researcher. And this is the time where you think about making your own research group, like what you want to do, whether you want to do a research in virology or like vaccinology or like basic science, what you want to do. And after that, your research group will be recognized and eventually you will become a leader or a mentor who is going to support the next generation. So if you're so passionate about research, and if you're thinking research as a career, please choose these stages very wisely. If you are not committed, if you are not motivated, don't go for that. Because in research, you will be very independent. No one will hold your hands. You have to you have to overcome all the struggles, and you have to be self-motivated. So this is a money thing. So most of us are so interested to know, okay, what is the career opportunity if we do research in science? Okay, so these are the like most highly paid jobs in science careers, and this is from 2018. I really wanted to take something from 2020, but COVID-19 changed everything. Okay, so let's go with this 2018 data. So these are the top 5 careers or promised careers in science. So look at this: microbiologist and clinical scientist. They comes at 4th and 3rd position. That means research is not a bad idea. Of course, you can make huge amount of money, and you can publish your data, and you can interact with the community and the society. So the career opportunities, for a researcher, there are a lot of career opportunities. It can be in academic research, like being a faculty position in some universities, or working as a research scientist in some other institutes, like central institutes or state institutes. And the second one is like industrial jobs or like policy making jobs. So I think Dr. Ajit has given very nice elaborative talk on this, so I'm not going to expand this. And the third one is business entrepreneurship. So this is a like new area, and most of us are not actually thinking about the possibility of making an entrepreneurship. Come up with a startup company. If you are a biotechnologist, or if you have a very well knowledge about some applied science, go for some startup. Think about making your own company and becoming a CEO or whatever you want to. So these are the 3 different avenues where we can achieve. So this is the most awaited topic for the day: barriers to a woman. Can we break them? So there are a lot of barriers to women. It's not in science. In everyday life, we are facing a lot of barriers. But I'm going to focus about barriers to a woman as a scientist. So this is a very hot topic in science, and this is a very elaborate topic. But first, I will be going through my personal story. Then I will go through the general aspects of this. Okay. So the first barrier, as a young vet, it happened at the age of 24. That means when I was a final year graduate student, I was so confused about my career. I don't know what I want to become. So there were the 3 main options in front of me: was go and work as a veterinarian, or choose research, that means go for master's degree, or try some administrative service like civil service. These are the 3 things in my mind. And I don't know what I really want to do, because I like all of these things with an equal passion. So what I did was, I went to one of my teachers, Dr. Suryadas. He's an assistant professor in Department of Surgery and Radiology in Pukod Veterinary College. I went to him and discussed with him, sir, these are my concerns. I don't know what I want to choose. I don't know whether I have to work as a veterinarian, or whether I have to go for a master's degree, or whether I have to focus on civil services. So he gave me a fantastic idea that I will give you one suggestion. Why don't you try for a master's degree in IVRI and chase your dream for your civil service there? Because IVRI is the facilities in IVRI, or the environment in IVRI will give you ample time to prepare yourself for the civil service. When I thought, okay, this is a great idea. So I went and chose to go for the master's degree in IVRI. And I did my master's degree in veterinary pathology and graduated there in 2015. So this is my advice for you. If you are in your final year of your bachelor's degree, find your career interest. What's your actual interest? Do you want to work as a veterinary surgeon, or do you want to go for research, or do you have any other ideas in your mind? Find your research interest and find a mentor, find a teacher, approach him or her and discuss your concerns. Trust me, they will help you. They will advise you. They will give you the recommendations. They will give you the suggestions. They will give you the expert opinions. So you will get a clear cut idea of what you really want to do in your next couple of years. So the second barrier to me was at the age of 26. So I completed my master's degree and came back to Kerala. And there comes the concern like, oh, get married soon. Your age is 26 now. Okay, so this is a relevant concern. And I thought, okay, I'm taking a break. I'm not going for my PhD degree. So let us deal with this business of like, or this, let us deal with this marriage. Okay. So what I did was I went and worked as a veterinary surgeon on contract basis for 1 year, like 2015 August to 2016 July. So during that time, I could identify my likes and dislikes because I was enjoying my career as a veterinary surgeon, and that was a really fantastic job. It's a nice time, but I could feel the difference, and I was thinking like, okay, I'm liking research more than being a veterinary surgeon because research is so exciting. I can see good results, and it's very exciting moments. But being a veterinary surgeon, it's every day same. There is not much difference. Same cases like mastitis cases or same pet animal cases. There is no excitement for each day. So that convinced me that I'm more enjoying research than being working as a veterinary surgeon. And I talked to many people, to my seniors who is already doing research in like different foreign countries, in Europe, in the US, and also in IVRI. I talked to many different people. And I talked to many senior veterinary surgeons in the field. And I tried to find out what are the positives and negatives about all these fields. So this is my suggestions to you, my young vets. Please identify your likes and dislikes. If you're so confused about your likes and dislikes, just explore all the opportunities and reach to a clear-cut conclusion of what you really want to do. And talk to people. It's not a peripheral talking. Go for a deep discussion with people in different fields and try to learn about the positives and the negatives of all the fields and take a decision and choose your career from there. Okay. So in 2016, I got admission for PhD, fall 2016 admission in veterinary medicine department, University of Maryland. Yeah, that's a proud moment. It's a rare opportunity. And luckily I got an admission there. There comes the next barrier to me at the age of 26. Like when we were seeking different marriage proposals, this question was the major villain. Going for PhD in the USA for 5 years, it's not acceptable. It was not acceptable at all. But I could convince my family about my passion, why I want to become a researcher, why I am liking my research over the career as a veterinary surgeon. And I could convince my family about the benefits of doing a PhD in the US. About the money benefits, about the experience I am going to get, about all the opportunities that I can explore. And my family trusted my passion. Then I did a little bit of research and tried to learn about the opportunities for the spouse, what job he can get or what he can do, whether he can go for some studies or like job. So I explored everything and I speak to that family, and I think I could convince them. Then At the age of 2018, after completing my first year in University of Maryland, there comes the biggest barrier. Trust me, that barrier was the most difficult barrier for me. So my professor in University of Maryland, he got a position in Indiana University, and he gave me different options like, Asha, either you can come with me or you can stay in Maryland University. You can choose a different faculty, whatever you want to do, feel free to do. And I thought, okay, this is just after my first year of PhD. In that time, I am just learning the US culture and I am just adapting to the US culture. And I was not able to make a decision. And this time I am going to get married as well. So that was a tough time for me. And this is a barrier. And this was a challenge. And what I decided was, and I talked to my fiancé, and he told me that, okay, you try to go to Indiana University because your professor is a nice person or he is a very supporting person. So don't hesitate to go with him. And I thought, okay, it sounds perfect. Okay, I'm going to Indiana University with him. And my major was changed to microbiology. So in Maryland University, I was doing my PhD in veterinary medicine, which is a very well-known topic for us. It's not a different one. But this one, oh God, this was a very different topic. I have no idea about this microbiology because this is not something what we are learning as veterinary microbiology during your undergraduates. This is a very basic microbiology. And the subjects are like structure of bacteria, structure of virus, gene expression, biochemistry, so on and so forth. But anyway, I chose that decision and I moved to Indiana University. And currently I am studying in Indiana University. I am a third year PhD student here. So the tragedy was I was forced to start my PhD all over again in Indiana University in 2017 fall. That means I lost my first year of PhD in Maryland. So that was not an easy decision, but anyway, I made that decision. Then what happened is that we started our lab in Indiana University, and I was the only member in that lab because this is a brand new lab in Indiana University, and me and the professor, only 2 members. And I was given a research project, and I was so excited about my research project. And I was facing continuous 16 failures in the first 6 months. No results, no way. I don't know what and that was not an easy time because I have moved to a new place like Indiana University. The people around me all are new. I have no idea about like, okay, what is research? And I have nobody to help. I did not have any seniors. So after that 16 failures, in March 2018, I could successfully come up with a protocol or a method where I could make recombinant rotavirus using the newly established reverse genetic system. So that was such a happy moment for me. And this was a post. This is a like screenshot of the post my professor posted in Facebook saying congratulations to me. And I am interested to discuss you about the comment he made during that time. So he was saying, this is just an amazing accomplishment, Asha. I'm so proud of your persistence and commitment. You deserve this success. Because I did not lose my hope in spite of my 16 failures. I did not have any seniors to ask for any help. So I was reading a lot of papers and I was reading a lot of articles in like different platforms like ResearchGate, and I was watching YouTube videos to find out an experimental protocol, and I tried different methods and I did not lose my hope. So this is my lab currently now. So we have around like this many members, and I am the senior member in the lab. I am a third year PhD student. And this is my advice to you guys. Sometimes our research does not work in the way we wanted. Sometimes we may not get any positive results. Sometimes our friends will be getting publications or they will be receiving a lot of appreciation. Still, we may not be getting anything. Face your challenges. Don't lose your hope. Work consistently, work and be committed, be motivated, because if you take up the challenge, you can bring up success. The next barrier to me was happened at the age of 2019, because this is 1 year after my wedding. So my husband was working in the UAE, and he told me that, okay, let us plan like this. He will resign from his job and he will come back to the US. And what happened was his US visa got denied twice. And that was such a bad time. And we did not have any idea like how to overcome that situation. And sometimes I thought about dropping my program because he is not able to come to the US. And he supported me, and he is the man behind my success. He supported me that I said, so like, don't drop your program. Anyway, you started it. So let us finish it. So you have a passion for your research and you are doing well. So don't think about me. I can wait for you, and I will patiently wait until you complete your PhD degree. So, but finally he could come here after overcoming all those challenges. Now he is studying here and he is working here as well. So this is an advice to the spouse and husbands, in-laws and families. Please, dear husbands, in-laws, please support her to chase her dream. She may not be able to change the world, but she can improve this world by his small effort. Please help her to complete her passion. You are the one person, husband or the spouse or fiancé, in-laws. You are the big support system for her to come up with a success. So these are the personal barriers I have been through, and I could overcome everything. And I feel now I'm a happy researcher, and I'm so proud to say I am a researcher. And these lists are the like barriers to a woman in science discussed by different people in different workshops. Okay, so I'm not going through the everything listed here, but let us discuss like some of these. Institutional sexism. Yes, it's there a little bit, not much, because whenever it's not common nowadays, but before, like a few years before, institutional sexism was there, because when somebody is thinking about making a power structure to the university or for any research program, they always preferred the male over the female. I don't know what was the reason. It could be some professional discomfort of including female research group into a team of male. The male might have thought like making a diverse group will be harder to manage. And when in earlier days, when females were going for a faculty position, there was some unconscious bias, because males were chosen over the females for some reason. It could be like people may be thinking females may not be productive, they may not be able to come up with grants or projects or something was there, and there was some unconscious bias. And the next barrier to women is lack of networks, because most of the females may not have much networks with other researchers. So we may not be able to know about the different opportunities that is available. So lack of networks, of course, was a problem. And lack of role models and mentors. We did not have wonderful role models or female mentors who can show their experiences or how they could overcome all these challenges. And the culture of science, it was male dominated, but currently it is changing. The females are given some opportunities. And this is a society concern. Like sometimes the research group will consider pregnant employee is a liability for them, or sometimes they will consider a pregnant woman is a handicapped person. That person is not able to produce anything. So that's a bad thing. So, and some people will think women has family commitments. They have to take care of their kids. The kids need their mothers. It's not concern of the fathers. let us change this. Now every area is getting changed, so the science field is also getting changed. Now the female students or the female researchers, they are getting the maternity leave, the paid maternity leave. They are getting like partial benefits, and there are a lot of appreciations given to the females in current days. So still there are these barriers, but we are overcoming that. Okay, so how to break these barriers? Society is changing, like every field is changing, but this change is very slow and it is painful. It's painful to accept women as head of something, head of the institution, and it is very difficult to assign some duties to women, but it is changing. And we need a joined up strategy. So the strategy has to begin from our family, and it has to go through the society, and finally it has to come up to the scientific field. So dear parents and husbands and in-laws, please support the girls. They have a dream, they have a passion for the research. Only you can help them, only you can support them. And the next one is respect the individual's experience. Don't show the discrimination like, that's a woman, she cannot do that, she may not be able to produce the result. Please stop that. Please try to respect her as an individual. Don't bring the gender here. Okay. And the last one is be open to the unexpected. Please accept it. If some woman is making wonders, please accept it. It is unexpected. I know it is unexpected, but please accept that. And this is like general things, like still, even though I talk for like 40 to 45 minutes, still there are concerns for student researchers, the early researchers. So believe me, these are not big barriers as you think. The first one is language. So most of us may be so passionate about doing research in like abroad countries, maybe in the US or in the Europe. So we might be thinking, well, I may not be able to go because my language is not good. I don't know how to speak English well. So trust me, don't worry. People here, they will accept you. They know we don't know English much, and they're not judging our accent. They are not judging our grammar or how we make a sentence. What they are judging is our caliber, our potential, our motivation and devotion for the science. And nationality. Nobody will judge you based on the nationality. I have many friends here. It's from different countries like China, Korea, Japan, and like India, lot of different countries. So none of these people in the US never discriminate any student based on their nationality. For them, we all are internationals. It's not about like, are you an Indian or are you a Chinese? No way, there is no discrimination. And next one is financial conditions. Don't worry about your financial conditions if you have a dream to do a PhD, because there are many fellowships. Different universities will give you different fellowships and assistantships, like teaching assistantship or research assistantship. So you will be able to survive, and you can save an enough amount of money, and you can earn whatever you can earn if you are doing any other jobs. But at the end of the day, you will get a degree as well as some earnings. So don't worry about the financial condition. And the fourth one is like grades. So some of us may be thinking, okay, my grades was not great during my BVSC or during my MVSC, so I may be able to go for some PhD degrees in abroad countries. Grades are not important, like to a certain extent. So there are like different universities. The different universities will be prioritizing different aspects. So like for big universities like Harvard or like something like, their criteria may be different, but there are many other universities, or there are many different programs like veterinary science or like animal science or agricultural or like general public universities. There are a lot of universities where you can explore your opportunities. And prior knowledge about the subject in depth, don't worry about that. If you don't have much knowledge about the subject, you still have the opportunity to read and learn in deep and deep. You have a nice environment when you are doing your PhD. Try to read a lot of things and learn about the subject. Hands-on experience. Don't worry if you don't have any prior experience. Once you complete your BVSC, don't worry about that. If you can make some experience, that is good, but don't get much worried about your experience. And I would suggest you, if you have any passion for research, please contact your any faculty in your universities and try to find out some small research projects, and try to get some basic hands-on experience, like how to pipette things, or how to make some agar plates for like bacterial culture, how to do like basic screening of bacteria, or like what is PCR, what is primer designing. So it's good to have a small experience on that, but it's not that important. So don't worry these listed things as a big barrier for you. And how to break these barriers within you? There are some barriers, it is not outside you, it is sometimes within you. First one is lack of confidence. You have to overcome that. Don't think that you are not suitable for anything. Yes, you are capable for something. So try to determine what is your confidence level and try to build up your confidence. Try to have an attitude. Try to have a dedication and a motivation for the research. And you should have a direction. Think about what you want to do after 10 years from now. Where you want to place yourself, how to sell yourself. So you have to have a motivation. And if you don't have enthusiasm, get the enthusiasm from the environment. When you are doing the PhD, learn from others, how people are making success, learn from your mentors, learn from the other faculty members, and grow your enthusiasm, read more, and broaden your knowledge. So if any of these factors is zero, like attitude, your direction, and the environment, the results can be zero. But still, you can work on this and you can improve yourself and you can make success. And all these factors are partially influenced by your personal decision, like how to deal with your confidence level, how to deal with your motivation and enthusiasm. So it's all within you. So please break the barriers within you. So my suggestions to the student researchers. So these are my points, what I learned from my life. We will come with lot of challenges. So challenge yourself. Don't give up. Try again and again. You can make success. Second one, be motivated, determined, and self-criticize. Sometimes we may not be doing right. So please take time and criticize yourself. Did you take the right decision or the wrong decision? Are you doing the things right or wrong? So please go for that. And third one is explore the opportunities. So go for the meetings like conferences, symposiums, and like organizational meetings, and meet different people. Meet the eminent people or the legends in the field. It can be like veterinary surgeons who is working in the field, or it can be the scientists, or it can be the faculty members. Go and meet those people, talk to them, introduce yourself. Never hesitate to introduce you to like people, because they don't consider you as stupid. Even though they are legends, they won't consider as like mere students. We all are colleagues, and we all are like having the same knowledge or information or same background, so they can understand you. So don't hesitate or stop you from contacting other people. And create networks. Creating network is very important in research. So whenever you go for some meetings or like conferences, try to present something like posters or like oral talk or like presentations, and interact with people, interact with eminent persons, and discuss with the research, and begin a networking there, because that will help you when you want to search for the careers. And find some collaborators when you are doing the research. So don't do the research in your own lab. Try to collaborate with the people in the other labs. It can be in the same institute or it can be in the different institute. And if you find some collaborators, that will open up new networks for you. And also they will give you very good suggestions. And follow the research ethics. This is very important. Sometimes the research may not go in a way what we wanted. Sometimes our results are negative. So don't fake your result. Please don't do that, because research has an ethics and we have to follow the ethics. And yeah, so you will get to know when you start the research. So keeping the research ethics is very important. And the next one is don't compare with others. So please don't compare with your friends. Like sometimes your friends may be so talented, they may be publishing 10 papers. It's not important. Don't compare with others, because your ability is not their ability. Or sometimes your project is not their project. They may be having an easy project. You may be having a difficult project. The question you are answering may be different. So it's all different. So don't compare with others. Just compare you with yourself. And also take a break if the things are not going well. If the research is not going well, you can take a vacation and come back as a fresh mind and start the research all over again. Make friends, talk to people, and discuss your issues and begin with a fresh mind. And never ever don't stress yourself, because a balanced personal life is also very important for a better research. So if you overstress yourself with your personal issues or like any other things, you are not going to do a good research. So for making decisions in the career, first of all, know yourself. Be informed about your potential, your knowledge, and also informed about the opportunities. And test your choices. So once you complete your PhD or something, you might have different opportunities like faculty position, going to industries, or like working in different organizations. And ask yourself and test your choice. And we are not judged by what we are judged by what we finish and not by what we start. So it does not matter whether we worked for 1 year in one company and 1 year in one institute. It does not matter. You are finally judged by what you achieve at the end of your career. And also you have to have your own assessment and think like, why my profile stay separate or like different from all others? Why I am so qualified for this career, why I am opting for, why my CV is special from my equivalent peers. So know yourself and assess yourself, then take a decision about your career. So let's go through some heroines in the science. Marie Curie, everybody knows her, right? She's a very well-known female scientist. She is the first person and the only woman who have been honored the Nobel Prize twice in two different fields, physics and chemistry. And her development of X-ray, that was a breakthrough discovery in science. It changed the entire science. So think, she is a woman. She is a woman not in 2020s. She is a woman in earlier centuries, where women did not have any rights to talk or vote or nothing, but she still made the wonder. The second heroine is Rosalind Franklin. So she is a very well-motivated scientist because she really wanted to become a scientist at her younger age, and her contribution to the X-ray crystallography changed the world. Her knowledge contributed to come up with the structures of like DNA, RNA, the viruses, and many different molecules. And her work, in fact, helped these people to get the Nobel Prize in 1962. So look at her. She is a woman as well. She made the history, right? So the limiting factor was the culture. It's not the women's brains, because women can do multiple things at the same time. She can take care of the kids, she can take care of the family, she can go for work, and she can do multiple things at the same time. So the limiting factor is not with the women's capability or not with the women's brain, it was something wrong with the culture. So we have to change our culture. It could be like, as I mentioned before, the culture of our family, culture of our society, and the scientific community. And as afterward, I just want to motivate you with some some words from these eminent people. If you don't set goals for yourself, you are doomed to work to achieve the goals of someone else. And the higher you set your target, the higher you will grow. With that, I will conclude my talk, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now,
Okay. Dr. Prina, please proceed.
now we are open for questions. If anybody is having any queries, please either you can put your queries in the chat box, or you can unmute and come forward. Is there anybody with some questions? Please unmute. Asha, there are some questions in the chat box.
Okay, I am going through that.
Okay. Oh, we have lot many questions.
Okay, so I think
Let's
it's
just scroll up.
Dr. Yeah, it's audible. Okay, so the question from D. Somi, can we do PG and PhD on same subject? If so, why did you change, ma'am? Oh, that's a good question. So, yeah, as I mentioned before, PhD is the stage where we are learning a lot of techniques, or like hands-on methods. So I really wanted to do some research in IVRI, and people suggested me pathology was a good subject, and I was not at all interested in pathology, but people told, okay, that was a very good subject, then I went for that. But once I started working on pathology, I was start liking that. So pathology subject is a very nice platform, because in pathology we are learning about most of the things, like basic things like cell biology, different diseases like virology, bacteriology, autoimmune diseases, infectious diseases, oncology, cancer. So from pathology we can deviate to any other branch, and virology, and so we are learning about virology as well in pathology. Then I thought, okay, I will go for virology, because my dream was to come up with something that can help the humankind, like make some vaccine or making some therapeutics. So when I was looking for my PhD opportunities, I was given this project of making a vaccine. So I found this is working, because this is virology as well as vaccine development. So I found this is very interesting. So you can do PG and PhD in same subject or different subject. It does not matter. It's up to you what's your passion and what you want to do after your PhD. Okay, so how did you get admission to University of Maryland? I mean, what is the procedure? That's an interesting question, because most of the time when we are seeking for admissions for the foreign universities, students will be completing their GRE and TOEFL. These are required things, and the transcripts for your program. So once you have everything, we will be applying for many different universities. So randomly applying to universities is not a good idea, because we have to pay a fee of like $70 to $100 for each application. So most of the time students may be contacting many faculty members and asking for their PhD position in their lab. And sometimes the faculty may give you a reply like, okay, yes, I have a position, or like, no, I'm not able to take a decision. It's through the program. So I did not go through any of these things, but I have two seniors, Dr. Berin and Dr. Irun in University of Maryland. So they were doing their first year of their PhD there, and they suggested me there is a new faculty in Maryland University, and he is looking for some students, and I just contacted him. he accepted me and I got the admission. I did not send like hundreds and thousands of emails to the faculties, and I did not apply to any other university. So I was so lucky to get an admission through my seniors and my friends. Okay, so Susmita, for studying abroad, what exam we have to give? As I mentioned before, it's like GRE and TOEFL. And I will suggest you to watch the webinar by Dr. Viju. I think he has given a very nice description about the steps needed for pursuing the research career in the foreign countries. So in short, it is like GRE, Graduate Record Exam, which is examining your analytical power in mathematics and English. And the second one is a English proficiency course like TOEFL or IELTS. Kavya, how did you approach a foreign university for your PhD after completing your MBSc? I think I answered that question before. Like it was through my friends. So if you have any seniors who is doing PhD in abroad countries, please contact them, keep a networking with them, and ask for any opportunities. So like some of you, like many juniors are contacting me asking for any opportunities in Indiana University. So as I have as I have discussed before, Indiana University, the program is so different from the veterinary program. It was a very, very tough time for me to complete that courses because I have no idea about bioinformatics and biochemistry, gene replication. The courses are so different. So I recommend you to go for veterinary program or like animal science based program. Is it compulsory to do a MBSc for PhD in foreign? No, not really. So in the foreign countries like US and the European countries, the only requirement for PhD or master's program, that is called as the graduate education here. So the only requirement for that is a 4-year degree. So here the bachelor's degree is a 4-year degree. So if you already have a 4-year degree, that is sufficient. Since our BVSC is 5-year degree, you are ready to go. There is no need of MBSc. Here you can directly go for PhD, but in the European countries there needs a master's degree before PhD, because in Europe PhD is only 3 years, but in the US it may be like 6 years. So Madhuri, is any other question? Okay, so there is one more question, like how could I know about research and fellowship opportunities in my subject? Okay, research and fellowship opportunities, I think first one is Google it. And like in most of the foreign countries for the PhD, it will be fully funded for your stipends as well as for your scholarships. It's fully funded. So if you're getting an admission, don't worry about the fellowship. You will get the stipend for sure. And talk to you, as I mentioned before, contact your friends and like seniors and get to know about the opportunities. And also Google it. There are a lot of scholarships like in Europe, like DAD scholarship, and in India is also giving a lot of foreign scholarships, like ICAR is giving some scholarships. So Google it and do some research by your own to find the opportunities. Is it necessary to do research and write a journal in UG? And not necessarily. It's not required to have a publication in your undergraduate degree to get a PhD. It's not at all required. But if you have a publication, that is good, but not required. PG academic achievements are important for PhD abroad. It's not important, but if you have any achievements, that will make your CV stronger and that will increase your probability of getting an acceptance letter soon. As a female researcher, if a male colleague of your group is not cooperative with you, then how to deal with them? Very good question. So nowadays, the female researchers, like most of the institutes have very clear-cut laws and regulations for the females. In our university, Indiana University, it is called Section 9, where if we are challenging any sort of physical, mental, or emotional harassments, we can go and complain to the university. And if it requires any action, the university will take the action against that person. It does not matter whether it is your professor or whether it is your lab member. The university will take action. The first stage will be a sort of like counseling or some sort of things, but there are a lot of rules and regulations to provide enough safety and security for the females. So don't worry about that. And still most of the universities are giving you the opportunity to change the lab or switch to a different lab if you are not comfortable with the lab you are working with. So there are a lot of solutions. Don't worry about that. Next question, can PG in clinical subjects go for PhD abroad? Yeah, so different questions. So it depends on like what kind of research you are looking for in PhD. So doing a research in clinical subject is not a real hindrance for you, because here your bachelor's degree is sufficient for a PhD degree. It does not matter what you actually did during your master's, because my veterinary pathology background is not at all considered here. So I don't think it make a difference if you have if you have a degree in clinical subject. Ma'am, can you please share your email ID? Okay, I think that was in my last slide. Okay. PG academic. Foreign language exams are compulsory. Yes, it is. It should be TOEFL or GRE, and the scores for the universities will be different, because for example, the TOEFL score, the maximum score is 120. So some of the universities will be asking for a TOEFL score of 100. Some other universities will be asking for a score of 110. So it varies between the universities, but English proficiency course is a required one. How did you approach the foreign university? Yeah, I answered that question. How can I make my resume stand out for pursuing MBSc abroad? So I recommend you to watch the webinar given by Dr. Viju. So he has explained how to make a resume, how to make a statement of purpose. So please watch that video. Does the country or university matter? Not really. As I mentioned before, it's not about where you start and how you start. It's about how you finish your journey, like how you are doing your research, how many publications you are making, and how many networks you are developing. So it's all about your own skills and research. The name of the university and the name of the country does not matter. It's your publications will be talking for you. So read about a student, even high schoolers being part of research activities and subsidiary Eugene medicine in college. Yeah, that's true. So here in the US, even the high school students or the undergraduate students can go to the research labs, and they will get a small project, and they will give very fantastic experience in the research. And I think in India, it's not, we have not reached there. So those who are in the undergraduate degree, as I mentioned before, please go to your faculty. Don't hesitate to contact them. Talk about your interest and your passion and your research ambitions, and ask for a small little tiny projects in their lab. Get to learn about the small things like how to handle the pipettes, or how to measure something, or how to weigh something, or like many small things. So go to your teachers and talk to them. They will help you and they will support you. Which institute you will suggest for PG in pathology, ma'am? Oh my God. So I don't know that question. So what I wanted to do, like, I don't know a good answer for that question. So I chose IVRI for pathology because I wanted to get my degree from IVRI. That was a dream place for me. So yeah, I went to IVRI, and I think you can go to the different websites for the different universities and look at the research each faculty is conducting. And if you are interested in some faculty's profile and research, please send an email to them. Please contact them and make a discussion with them and decide your interest and your university. Should I switch to microbiology or pharmacology, ma'am? It's up to you, like what you want to be after a few years in your career. If you're looking for some industry position or something, I think pharmacology and microbiology will be a great help. But it does not matter, because PhD is about learning different techniques and methods and becoming an independent researcher. So it does not matter, but if you're really looking for an industrial position, I think that will help you. What is the scope of research in India? Is it as good as foreign? That's an interesting question. So in research in India, because currently the number of PhD graduates are more than the number of opportunities, because every year a lot of students are graduating from different colleges. So about the scope of research in India, so I recommend you to watch the webinar by Dr. Ajit. He has explained different research institutes where we can find the careers, like different national institutes. There are different state institutes. So if you have a high profile degree, I think you can go for interviews in those kind of research institutes in India as well. I think it's changing. It's getting better, and females are getting more opportunities. It's yeah. So please watch his webinar. While the phone and email abroad universities faculty project plan or PhD research topics before the admission. Email or do they ask? No. It depends. So in the US and all, they never ask you to come up with a project plan or a PhD research topic. They usually, because the professors already have a couple of ongoing projects. So what they wanted is a graduate student or a postdoc. He is able to carry out the experiment. So most of the time there will be projects already set for you, and you will not be asked for any project plan in the US. But in the European countries, so I got one scholarship in Germany, and it was like ICAR, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose International Fellowship. And for that, I was required to submit a project plan to the foreign university. So I submitted to a foreign university in Germany, and they approved my project. And when I submitted my application to ICAR, I got the approval. So if we are trying to look for fellowship from our end, from our part, we have to come up with a project plan. If we are just looking for a PhD admission in the US, you may not need a project plan. What made you feel research field is so outstanding? What highlighted your interest in research, ma'am? Yeah, so from childhood, I really want to become a vet, because I was so what to say, excited when a veterinarian was treating our cow and our dog in my house. So I was thinking, oh, this is wonderful. And I decided, yes, I want to become a veterinary doctor. And I learned all my subjects in my UG with so much passion and enthusiasm, and I love the veterinary subject. And when I was reaching my final years of my undergraduate, my passion was to do some research in biomedical science. And you know what? I wanted to make artificial heart for humans. That was my dream in my mind. So I went to Dr. Sainis Juliet and Dr. Raghu Ravindran, and I discussed with Dr. Suryadas, as I mentioned before, and I talked about my fancy dream. And they suggested, like, biomedicals, yeah, it's good, but it's too focused. So if that's your passion, go for some master's degree, not like something like pathology. So that will open up a broad interest, and I went for that. And after completing my pathology, like, my master's degree was so cool. Like, I did a lot of things during my master's program, and that was so interesting and exciting. For example, even if we are doing a PCR reaction, after 2 hours, we are excited to see the PCR bands, right? or if you are just doing a gel, running a gel, or doing a Western blot, after 1 hour or 1.5 hours, we are excited to see the results of the band. That was the real motivation, because I was excited for everyday results or like everyday challenges. That's the only interest that highlighted my passion for research. Can PG clinical subjects, I answered that question. Do we need GRE and TOEFL for postdoc position? No, you do not need anything like GRE and TOEFL for postdoc position. Just your research experience and your publications will help you to get a postdoc position. What's your view on research opportunities and perspectives in India and the US? As I mentioned before, Dr. Ajit and Dr. Viju discussed that topic already. How can I choose the university to get a PhD admission and apply to that? As there are so many universities, how can I apply to well-named universities required achievements? Yeah, this is it's a complicated question. So I do like, for well-known universities, of course, their criteria will be so high, like your GRE scores has to be high, your TOEFL scores has to be high, and of course, your CV has to stand out of all the other candidates, right? If you're applying for Harvard universities, like you have to come in the top 10 of the thousands of applications. So our CV, the experience, our publications, or as well as our scores for GRE and TOEFL will help you to get your admission in a reputed university. And as I mentioned before, I was also considering the top universities when I was looking for the PhD admission. Like, okay, what is the number one veterinary universities in the US? Yes, Cornell University. But it does not matter, right? I am doing in Indiana University, and I'm so happy and I'm so proud what I'm doing. So I think university name does not matter. It does matter. The only thing that matters is like what you have once you complete your PhD. Please, can you share the record of Dr. Viju, please? Yes, you can. So I think the organizers can help you there. Ma'am, what kind of publications we can make in our undergraduation? Yes, good question. So I have one small little publication when I was doing my internship. So I published that in JVI, journal, Indian Veterinary Journal, IVJ, something.
IVJ.
Yeah, Indian Veterinary Journal. So make small, cute little stories. It can be when you are doing in your undergraduate courses in your clinics, or it can be very small research when you are doing your microbiology course, like isolate some bacteria, screen it, like find the sequences of that. Like it could be many small things, and you can publish in the very small journals in India. If the results are of very high profile, you can publish in international journals as well. But I recommend everybody to come up with one small publication in like IVJ, like during your internship. So I published like schistosomus reflex in bovine dystocia, something. So yeah, so you can come up with short little stories during your course. Yeah, so everybody please find what is interesting for you. Or you can submit some abstract to the conferences, like there are state-wise conferences, national level conferences. So make a little story during your internship and publish those abstracts in the conferences and meetings. You can include that in your CV as well, okay? How to manage family responsibilities and scientific career as an individual? Very good question. It really depends upon who is your partner and who is your in-laws. Because when I was married, as I mentioned before, my journey was not an easy one. Marriage and like getting my husband here and finding a course for him, a job for him, it was not easy. And of course, as we are women, the society and our family is also concerned about having kids. So that is another challenge. So we will be going through all these responsibilities and challenges, and it's all depends on like how you can convince your spouse and your in-laws about your passion And I am so proud to say I have a very supporting husband and very supporting and motivating in-laws. They are so proud of whatever I am doing. So I am lucky in that concern. But I don't think managing family responsibilities and scientific career is not two different things. We have to find time for our personal activities as well as scientific activities. Personal life, work life balance is very important. So in the US, there is no hard and fast time schedule for the research. Like if you're interested to go from 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m., yes, you can do that. If you want to go from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., yes, you can do that. So the time schedule is little flexible here. And here there are paid maternity leaves for the students, and like there are provided insurances and like baby care facilities little bit. So there are a lot of supporting system in the US. And so like if I think it's not hard to manage family and scientific career. Is there a uphand for a vet student who did masters in microbiology compared to a non-vet student who did masters in the foreign country? So I don't think I am the right person to answer that question because I'm not doing my research in a veterinary university, because I'm doing my research in a public university named Indiana University. So I don't think, honestly, I don't think there is there is any benefit for a microbiology graduate versus any other graduate, because a PhD is all about learning techniques and like doing experiments, consistently chasing your like challenges, or like asking the questions and coming with answers. So so if you don't have a much background in microbiology, still people in your lab will teach you the basic techniques and the methods. So there is no difference between a person with microbiology background and without microbiology background. At the end of the day, we all will have all the experiences. Say about the exam we need to write after PG in pathology to become a renowned pathologist in the India, ma'am. Oh my God. I'm not the right person to answer that question, because pathologist, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I'm sorry. What is the salary for assistant professor in vet school in the US? Salary. So the faculty salary depends on the university. It is true for a graduate student as well as it is for a faculty member. So the different universities will be offering different amounts, but on an average, it will be about around like $80,000 per year. What is a postdoc position? Okay, so postdoc position means postdoctorate position. That means after completing our PhD, we will be working in somebody else's lab or some other research group as a research assistant or a research scientist or something else. That means we will not be taking any courses, or we are not going through any classes. The only responsibility for a postdoc is to do a project and come up with data and publish it. So that is the first stage of a research career in the US. Like immediately after graduating from a college, people will go for postdoc training, where we are doing an independent project and writing our own manuscript and publishing it and looking for some other opportunities. So here in the US, if we are a graduate student, like who is doing a PhD or master's, our professors will support us for everything during our manuscript writing, during our experiments. If we come up with any issues or problems, the professor will take care of you, even about your emotional fitness as well. But if you're working as a postdoc position, that's a different case. Postdoc position is an independent researcher. Professor will not care much about you. You have to come up with everything. You have to design the experiments, write the manuscript, everything. So that is the next stage after the PhD. What are the hindrances? What are the hindrances on publication you have faced as a female, as like giving more time demand for writing, reviewing the process? Yeah, so that's a good question. So about the publication thing, it really depends on who is your mentor is and how famous he is. So if you're working, I'm talking from my perspective. So if your professor is a very well-known person in the field, of course, it will be so easy to get things published. And my professor, he's an amazing person, very fabulous person, and he's so supporting, and he's so helping, and he motivates us every day, like, okay, we have to get it published, publish it soon. And he's a well-known person. And to be frank, actually, he is writing the most part of the manuscript for me, because my research is very novel, and it's a very competitive research, so we have to get things published fast. So we will be writing together, so I will be taking care of all the experiments, interpretation of the data, and like writing some things like materials and methods and introduction, and he will be writing some parts. So it's a joint writing as far as me and my professor is concerned. But it's not the general case, because some professors will demand the students to come up with a full polished draft of the manuscript, and the professor may not be contributing much to their writing. So in that case, the students may be publishing slowly, but mine was a different case. So different professors will deal that situation differently. But for me, I was so lucky, and I think like I'm in a good situation now. And also, like, it's also about like if we have collaborators, if we have some collaborators and we are working with them for their project, we will get manuscripts, we will get co-authorship in their manuscripts as well. So finding collaborators is will be very helpful for you in terms of the networking, for the career opportunities, and as well as for increasing the number of the manuscripts. Can you elaborate a bit about your publication in bovine dystocia related schistosome? Oh my God. Okay. So I was doing internship in one hospital in like veterinary polyclinic, and we were asked to attend one case in a cow, and we when we went, it was a case of because the cow was not cowing. So when the veterinary surgeon examined, it's found that it's some sort of monster, because he could oh, I forgot the medical terms. He could what? Find out many different legs for, like, it was not 4. So he found that the number of limbs for that calf was more than 4. So it is not possible to have a normal carving for that animal. So what we did was we I don't know what's it. So we amputed the 4 limbs of the cow, and we took this calf out. And when we look at the calf, it was having like 8 limbs instead of 4. And I found it is interesting, and I took just a picture of that, and I showed my parents like that. Okay, please see the picture of the calf. Instead of having 4, it has 8. And my family was so interested in that story. Then I thought, okay, sometimes it may be very common for our field vets. It may not be the case for the public. So there is some sort of interest in that. Then I collected all the information in my notebook, and after completing my internship, I was working as a teaching assistant in the Pukkod Veterinary College for 3 months. And during that time, I just wrote the like initial draft of that case, like the treatment and management, and also the end result. It was a very short publication. And I asked comments from my professors like Dr. Raghu Ravindra, Dr. Suryadas, and they gave me some comments, and I modified my manuscript according to that comments, and I submitted to that journal, and it got published. So just take good quality pictures of your cases, and also make documents for all these small cases, and read about the related topics and make a draft and seek help from your seniors or other faculty members and ask for their suggestions in your manuscript. They will help you. Can we take our family abroad while pursuing a PhD abroad? Yes, of course. So in the US, most of the students will be given the student visa called F1 students visa. So I was also on my F1 during my initial stages of my PhD. But when so in that case, the dependents, that means the spouse, that means the husband or the wife, whoever, and the children can come along with us on a dependent visa called F2 visa. So initially when my husband was applying for an F2 visa, he did not get that. So F2 visa is not a good one because the F2 dependent cannot work in the US. They can stay with us, but they cannot study or they cannot work. So since his visa got denied, I contacted my university and they suggested me to switch my visa to another category called J1. So I switched my visa to J1 and my husband's visa got switched to J2 and he could come in here. And J2 is a good visa for a short-term purpose because he can study here as well as he can work here. So there is nothing to worry about taking our family to the US when we are doing the PhD. And for our parents, we can get some visitor visa and they can come and visit us and stay with us for 6 months in a single stretch. So anybody can accompany us, like dependents can stay for the entire time, parents can stay with us for 6 months. Can you give the source from where we can read your publication? Oh my God. So you can search in Google Scholar and you can type in Asha A. Philip. I think you can find my journals here, all my small journals and like my current publication. Good session. West Bengal also he's giving, okay. Is it possible to work as an assistant professor simultaneously while working as a researcher in a foreign university? Yes. In the foreign universities, most of the faculty position is research oriented. But I think in medical and veterinary universities, the faculties are termed as teaching faculties because most of the time they will be engaged in teaching rather than research. But in some other universities, for example, Indiana University, it is a public university. So most of the teachers are involved, most of the faculty, for example, my professor, they are involved in research rather than teaching. Of course, they have to teach maybe one course in one semester or something, but they are not entirely focusing on teaching. So most of the faculties are doing research when they are working as an assistant professor. That's the case here. But in our veterinary universities, our faculty will be mostly focusing on teaching sessions rather than research. So that is the difference between professional universities versus public universities. So if you are so interested in working as a research at the same time you are working as an assistant professor, I think it's good to go in like some public universities. How much amount can we get as a fellowship during PhD? So it actually varies between the universities, but it is not bad at all. So on an average, most of the students will get the complete tuition waiver. That means we do not need to pay any tuition to the university because the program covers the tuition fee for us. And some universities will cover the insurance for us as well. Sometimes we may have to pay for the insurance. Sometimes the university pays for it. As far as I'm, in my case, I am getting a complete tuition waiver as well as an insurance waiver. And in addition, I am getting an annual stipend of like around $25,000 to $28,000. And I can apply for some other grants and scholarships and fellowships on top of that. So at a minimum, we will get $25,000 per year. and we have to manage our monthly expenses like the rent, the groceries, and all the other expenses from that 25,000. Still, we can save a good amount of money from that. F1 stage visa, I don't know. Can we take our parents? Yes, they can come to the US in a like visitor visa, like B2 visitor visa. You are awesome, ma'am. Much needed session. Thank you. After doing BVSC, can we enter into contract research organization in India for experience? Contract research organization. After BVSC, I don't think so. I may be wrong, so you can ask people who has much experience than me, because BVSC is just a professional, it's a very basic course, and we are not doing any research during our BVSC, and we do not have any hands-on experience. So I don't think we will get research position in any organization, but you can contact some organizations, like whether they are offering any small internships or like any voluntary positions or like something like that. I don't think position as a like professional is not easy with a BVSC degree. I may be wrong, but I don't know. Thank you so much for this informative session, and I came to know many things new because of this session. Oh, thank you so much. It's my pleasure that I could help you. So I have gone through all these questions in the chat session. I don't know, is there any additional question?
Dr. Asha?
Yes.
Are you tired?
I can drink.
Have a cup of water. I think we can wind up. Dr.
Yeah.
Anandu? Dr. Anandu, are you available? Okay, it seems he is not there. Okay, on behalf of Anandu, I thank Dr. Asha for this wonderful motivating session for the lady veterinarians who are wishing to have a career abroad as a researcher. Because of a culture or something, or we always think that we have some restrictions or barriers for going abroad. And even me myself, I stay here as a VS, even with a PhD. I think this is a very motivating session, and hope many of our participants will be seen abroad as a researcher. Okay, thank you, Dr. Asha. It was, again, I'm saying it was a very wonderful, motivating session for I was also feeling that I should go abroad soon.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
I would say, like, everybody, if you like, don't think research in foreign countries as your, like end of your journey or something. It is a nice opportunity to learn about the culture and like research here. So just try for at least a postdoc position for a few years and go back to India. So I would recommend everybody to try for it.
Yeah, do that. Yeah. Okay, it's 7:50. It's dinner time.
Okay, bye bye.
Let's find them. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating. I thank IVA Kerala for giving us this platform for the webinar. And finally, goodbye, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Asha, again.
Bye.
Bye.